I'm Dr. Christy, and this is Climbing Fish Parenting, practical parenting strategies in 20 minutes or less. I'm a psychologist and behavior analyst, and I work with exhausted, overwhelmed parents who feel like they've tried everything and nothing works. If you're listening to this while folding the laundry, hiding in your car, or wishing bedtime would just end already, you're in the right place. Today, I'm answering 3 questions from parents about the real stuff summer brings. Chores that never get done, house rules that aren't sticking, and yes, whether your kid actually needs to shower. Ready to transform your parenting journey? Let's dive in. All right, school is out, or nearly out, and I keep hearing from parents that summer has this way of surfacing the stuff that the school year structure was quietly holding together. The routine disappears, the days get longer and looser, and suddenly you're realizing that your kid has no idea how to set the table, hasn't showered since Tuesday, and is tracking mud through the kitchen for the 14th time this week. And here's what I want you to hear before we get into any of it. This is not a parenting failure. This is what happens when the external scaffolding that was quietly holding things together, the schedule, the routines, the structured week, the expectations that come with it, shifts or disappears. For kids who are wired differently, that internal scaffolding is often the exact piece that doesn't come naturally. So summer doesn't create new problems. It reveals the ones that were always there, quietly being held up by structures that are now gone, which means the goal isn't to white knuckle through July and August waiting for September. It's to build some of the scaffolding back in, intentionally, in ways that actually fit how your kid's brain works. That's what today is about. So let's get into the questions from listeners just like you. Each one could be its own full episode, and some of them might be in the future. But I want to give you something useful right now. Question 1. Now that it's summer, I really want my kid to take on more responsibility. Setting the table feels like a reasonable place to start. But it's like a battle, and it never actually gets done. What am I missing? I love this question because it sounds so simple on the surface. Set the table. A couple plates, forks, maybe some cups. How hard can it be? And then it doesn't happen. Again. And you find yourself either doing it yourself in exasperated silence or nagging your way to the dinner table every single night. And nobody is happy about any of it. You feel like you're failing at teaching basic life skills. Your kid feels like they're being harassed. Nobody wins. Here's the first thing I want you to genuinely consider before you try anything else. Is there an executive function issue getting in the way? I know, that might sound like I'm overcomplicating what feels like a simple chore, but setting the table, or any reoccurring responsibility, requires your child to do several things that don't happen automatically for a lot of kids who are wired differently. They have to remember that it's their job. They have to know when it's time to do it. They have to initiate without being told, and they have to follow through to completion without getting distracted, redirected, or simply forgetting what they started. For a lot of kids, one or more of those steps is genuinely hard, not won't hard, can't without support hard. And the key to unlocking the chore is figuring out which step is breaking down, because the fix for each one is different. Is it time blindness? Kids with ADHD in particular have a very different relationship with time than what we expect. Dinner is in 20 minutes is abstract. I have lived this one, guys. It means almost nothing to a brain that doesn't naturally track time passing. They're not ignoring you, even when it feels like it. They genuinely don't feel the 20 minutes happening. So by the time dinner is ready, the table is still bare. Not because they decided not to do it, but because the moment never felt like it arrived. Is it initiation? This is the executive function skill of starting a task without an external prompt. Some kids know perfectly well that setting the table is their job. They intend to do it. And then the task just doesn't self-start in their brain. It sits there as an intention that never becomes an action. That's not laziness, and it's not defiance. It's a gap between knowing and doing that's really common in ADHD and autism, and it requires a bridge. An external cue that converts the intention into motion. Is it distraction? Some kids fully intend to set the table, get up to do it, pass through the kitchen, and then something happens. A sibling says something, a thought appears, the dog walks by, and the table is completely gone from their mind. They're not avoiding it, they just lost it. Once you know which piece is the problem, you can actually solve it instead of just repeating the same instruction louder. For time blindness, the most effective fix is usually task pairing, connecting the chore to something that already happens reliably at the same time every day. If your kid always gets a snack around 4:30, that moment becomes a trigger to check their dinner job. You're not adding a new thing to remember. You're attaching the new thing to something the brain already does. The snack happens, and that's the cue. Done. And it doesn't matter if that table is sitting there, set, for 2, 3 extra hours. It matters that they could be successful in setting it. For initiation, try bringing them physically into the kitchen before dinner for something they actually want to do. Come tell me about what happened in your game today. Come help me taste this and tell me if it needs more salt. Come sit with me while I finish this up. Now they're in the room. Dinner is visible. The table is right there. And the gap between intention and action is about 3 feet instead of an entire floor of the house. A gentle, can you grab the plates while you're up, lands very differently in that moment than a call from the other room. Now, the other angle I want you to consider is whether you can make the table itself something worth showing up for. A lot of kids who are wired differently struggle at mealtimes in ways that have nothing to do with food. Sitting still while food is being passed and people are talking and the sounds of plates and utensils are happening all around them is a significant amount of sensory and social processing happening at once. For some kids, dinner is genuinely hard, and setting up for something hard is harder than setting up for something good. So what if dinner had something in it for them? Not a reward chart, not a consequence system, just something at the table they actually care about. Some kids love a silly conversation starter card. Some love a trivia question. Some love a game you play while you eat. In our house, we've done everything from 2 truths and a lie to looking up a weird animal fact before dinner. None of it is fancy. All of it makes the table feel like a destination instead of an obligation. And here's a thought. What if setting the table wasn't just about plates and forks, but about your kid being in charge of whatever makes the table feel special tonight? Maybe they pick out a tablecloth or a centerpiece. Maybe they bring in something from the garden. Maybe they get to choose the music. Suddenly, the job has something in it for them, some ownership, some creativity. And the kid who couldn't remember to put out 4 forks is now at the table before you are. One last thing. If you've tried all of this and it's still not working consistently over time, across multiple responsibilities, not just the table, that pattern is worth paying attention to. Not every child who struggles with chores needs an evaluation, but if you're providing all the scaffolding and it's still not building, that's important. Question 2. I don't allow shoes in the house, but my kid never remembers. I am so fed up. It feels like nothing I try works. I hear the frustration in this question. And I want to say something before I give you any strategies, because I think it's actually the most important thing I'll say today. When a rule isn't being followed, the first question I'd encourage you to ask is not, how do I get my kid to comply? The first question is, does the system I've created actually work for how my kid's brain works in that specific moment? Because sometimes what looks like a compliance problem is actually a design problem. The rule exists. Your kid probably knows the rule, but rules live in the thinking brain. And the moment your kid walks in the door, bag on, something on their mind, already halfway to wherever they're headed, their thinking brain is not the part that's running the show. They're on autopilot. And on autopilot, they do what they've always done, which is walk inside in their shoes. You can enforce a rule harder, and what you'll get is more conflict. Or you can design the moment so that the right behavior is the easy behavior, and you get compliance without the fight that way. Let me give you a personal example. We have a mudroom area just inside the house from the garage door. Seems like the obvious place to take shoes off, right? There's little cubbies for them and everything. Except my kids would come in from the farm in their dirty boots and leave them all over my kitchen floor every single time. I tried reminders. I tried being very clear about the rule. I tried the frustrated, we have talked about this conversation that I know none of us are proud of and all of us have probably had. And then I created a boot area in the garage itself before they come up the steps, not inside in the garage. And it worked almost immediately. Not because my kids suddenly developed better memory or more respect for the house rules. It worked because walking up the stairs in farm boots is genuinely less comfortable than leaving them at the bottom. And there was a place for them. The design made the right behavior the path of least resistance. The environment did the work the rule couldn't. That's the principle I want you to apply here. Look at the exact moment the rule breaks down. Where is your child when they forget? What are they thinking about? What is the physical setup in that spot? And then ask, what would make the right behavior, the obvious behavior in that moment? For shoes specifically, if your child doesn't think about them until they're already inside, a mat right at the door, where shoes naturally land, at least contains the situation. But even better than a mat is something that makes taking shoes off feel like the beginning of something good, rather than just the end of something. Slippers waiting, a basket of cozy socks, something their feet actually want to step into. And I want to be real about this for a second. There are a lot of kids out there who struggle with sensory issues. The reason they resist taking shoes off in the first place is often that what comes next is kind of unpleasant. Cold tile, rough carpet, hard floors that bother their feet. If that's what they're stepping into, there's a sensory cost to removing their shoes that you might not be factoring in. And they might never say anything unless you ask. Removing that cost, a pair of slippers, a soft mat, a basket of fuzzy socks they picked out, it isn't indulging bad behavior. It's removing a real barrier. You can also try having your child make a sign. Actually, have them make 4 signs. These signs become a reminder to take their shoes off. Not a sign you made that they're supposed to follow, but something that they have ownership of, that they designed. Their own drawings and photos, whatever spoke to them. Hang one, then remind them to change the sign every single Sunday so their brain keeps registering it instead of going on autopilot past it. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with on this one. When you're standing there furious because they tracked mud across the floor again, it feels personal. It feels like they just don't care about your house, your rules, your floors. But for most kids who are wired differently, what's happening is much more neutral than that. The rule exists somewhere in their brain. The moment the rule is relevant is not a moment they're accessing it. There's a gap between knowing the rule and applying it in context. And that gap isn't a character flaw. It's a wiring difference. And wiring differences respond much better to environmental design than to repeated reminders. Change what the moment asks of them. That's your lever. Question 3. How do I get my kid to shower over the summer? There's no school, no social pressure from classmates, and it is hot and they are getting stinky. They think the pool counts. It doesn't. I know right now somewhere a parent is having this exact argument in real time. The pool doesn't count. I don't care how long you were in it. Let me give you the general framework first, and then I'm going to explain why this one actually deserves a much longer conversation and how you can be a part of that. The starting point with showering, and honestly with most reoccurring battles around personal hygiene, is getting buy-in outside of the moment of conflict. Not when you're standing in the hallway telling them they need to go shower right now and they're arguing about pool water. That conversation is already over before it starts. Both of your nervous systems are activated. Nobody is being curious or collaborative, and whatever you say is going to land as an attack instead of a request. Have the conversation earlier, during a calm moment in the day, or even the night before. Something like, hey, I want to talk about something for a second. I've noticed showering has been a battle this summer, and I really don't want it to keep being one for either of us. Can we figure out something that actually works? That framing matters. You're not delivering a consequence. You're not restating the rule. You're acknowledging that the current system isn't working. which your kid already knows, and inviting them into the problem solving instead of positioning yourself on opposite sides of it. And when you do that, you might hear something that explains a lot, that the water pressure bothers them, that they hate how long it takes their hair to dry, that the shampoo you bought smells wrong to them, that the bathroom is cold or the light is too bright, or the whole experience just feels like a lot. These things sound small. For your kid, they're not small. They can be the entire reason showering feels like something to avoid every single day. And if you don't know about them, you can't fix them. Once you know what's actually in the way, you troubleshoot that specific thing. Different shampoo, a warmer towel, a shower playlist they control, a timer that gives them a defined end point. Because for time-blind kids, take a shower with no time boundary, that can feel like a formless, endless obligation. But 10-minute shower, timer on, you're done when it goes off, is completely manageable. On the reward side, yes, tie in something that fits the season and something they actually care about. If they shower, they get an extra 20 minutes of screen time tonight. If they stay on top of it across the week, they pick Saturday activity. Something like that. Make it concrete. Make it immediate. Make it something they genuinely want. Rewards that are specific, timely, and meaningful to them. They're going to help. Now, I want to point out that this is a general answer. The specific answer to this question varies enormously depending on your child's age, their neurotype, and what's actually driving the resistance. A 7-year-old who doesn't shower is a completely different situation than a 14-year-old who doesn't shower. An autistic child who finds the sensory experience of showering genuinely overwhelming needs a different conversation and intervention than an ADHD kid for whom the initiation is the whole problem, and a kid who's struggling with depression. And summer can be a genuinely hard season for some kids, especially when the structure disappears. Maybe showing you something important through the not showering that has nothing to do with hygiene habits at all. Let me know if this is a situation that's happening in your house. Reply to this week's newsletter and tell me the real-life situation you're navigating. Your child's age, their profile, or something specific about their wiring or the situation. Let me know what you've tried. I'd be happy to cover specific strategies in a future episode. This week, pick one thing from today and just try it. Maybe it's figuring out which executive function step is breaking down with your table setter. Time blindness, initiation, distraction, and building one specific cue around that piece. Maybe it's looking at the exact moment the shoe rule breaks down and redesigning that moment instead of restating the rule. Maybe it's having one calm and curious conversation with your kid about showering before the conflict happens instead of during it. See what shifts. All right, that's it for today. The thread running through all of the questions today is to look at what the specific moment is actually asking of their brain, and then change the design of the moment instead of repeating the rule. If this episode was helpful, share it with one parent who's already in full summer survival mode. If you aren't getting practical tips and exclusive strategies delivered straight to your mailbox, then join the Climbing Fish Parenting community at climbingfishparenting.com/newsletter. That strategy I just gave you, it's the whole Climbing Fish philosophy in action. There's a quote, "Everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid." Your kid isn't broken. Your parenting isn't broken. Sometimes we're just asking our fish to climb trees. That's what we fix here. I'm Dr. Christy, and I'll see you next week.